I canceled my wedding after my fiancé said he would never cut his ex-wife out of his life because of their history together. The message lit up his phone while we were arguing about takeout containers. He had left them on the coffee table again. I had asked him to throw them away, and he reached for his phone with the exhausted patience of a man who apparently believed both chores and emotions were personal attacks. I wasn't trying to read the screen, but the preview was right there. "Are we doing your dad's birthday dinner the usual way this year?" It was from his ex. I looked at him. "Why is she asking you about your dad's birthday dinner?" He locked the phone, "Because she always comes." We had been together for 5 years. He had lived in my house for 3, and we had been engaged for almost a year. I bought the place before meeting him after working ridiculous hours at an architecture firm and surviving on cheap food for most of my 20s. The floors were uneven, the cabinets never closed properly, and the back door stuck whenever it rained. But it was mine. When he moved in, I cleared half the closet, gave him the larger bathroom drawer, and tried not to notice how quickly his things became ours while the responsibilities stayed mostly mine. None of that bothered me enough to name at the time. He bought groceries, handled yard work when he remembered, and could make the house feel warm just by singing badly in the kitchen. I genuinely believed we were building a shared life. The wedding felt like the next obvious step, not a rescue attempt or a deadline. That was part of why the message confused me so much. I did not think I was competing for him. I thought the competition had ended years before I arrived. His ex had been in the background from the beginning. She appeared at his mother's retirement lunch, neighborhood cookouts, holiday brunches, and family trips. She had dated him for years before me, and their breakup had supposedly been so friendly that both families decided nothing needed to change. At first, I told myself everyone was emotionally evolved. I had dated women and men before him, and still spoke occasionally to one former partner, so I understood that a breakup didn't require scorched earth. But occasional contact wasn't the same as asking about family traditions like she was still on the planning committee. I asked whether he thought it was strange. He sighed before I finished. "Arden, we've talked about this. Our families are close. I didn't ask anyone to stop being close." "Then what are you asking?" I hated that question because I had spent years pretending I didn't need a clear boundary. "Why does she still act like she's part of your immediate family?" "Because everyone is mature enough to handle it." Mature was his family's favorite word. Mature meant nobody had to feel uncomfortable except me. Mature meant his ex could show up everywhere, but if I reacted, I was insecure. I said I wasn't trying to start a fight. He said I had already started one. Then he carried the containers into the kitchen with exaggerated patience. While I sat on the couch feeling jealous, embarrassed, and annoyed at myself for feeling jealous. Every time something bothered me, I put my own discomfort on trial. Was I controlling, too sensitive, projecting? By the time I reached a verdict, everyone else had moved on, and I was apologizing for the tone of a conversation I had barely been allowed to have. He came back, kissed my head, and said, "You're the one I'm marrying." I wanted that to be enough, so I nodded and let the subject die. That was my special talent in that relationship, mistaking the end of a conversation for the resolution of a problem. A few weeks later, his parents hosted a birthday gathering for his father. It was supposed to be simple, which in his mother's world still meant folded napkins, handwritten place cards, and enough food for a small wedding. His ex arrived with a casserole in wine. She kissed his mother, hugged his father, and walked into the kitchen without asking where anything went. She knew which cabinet held the serving dishes, where the extra ice was, which aunt drank decaf, and which cousin hated onions. I was still being reminded which bathroom guests should use. She laughed with his mother over an old story while my fiancé looked relieved that everyone was getting along. I felt like the only person in the room who had missed an important rule. His mother noticed me watching and approached with the gentle expression she used whenever she was about to correct someone while sounding compassionate. "Everything okay?" I said yes, then added, "It's just unusual for me." "What is?" I glanced toward his ex. "How involved she still is." His mother smiled. She had been a therapist before retiring, and every disagreement with her somehow became a lesson. Maintaining affection after a relationship ends can be a sign of emotional maturity. Not every bond has to become hostile. I agree. I just think there is a difference between staying friendly and still being treated like a daughter. His father joined us and said the two families had been close for decades. Their parents had vacationed together, attended funerals together, and shared holidays. Cutting anyone off, he said, would mean choosing sides. No one was asking him to cut off her parents. Still, they had already chosen a side. They had simply decided mine was rude for existing. My fiancé heard enough to understand the topic and immediately changed it. His father went to check the grill. His mother offered me more wine. The moment closed before I could say anything useful. My parents were there too. During dinner, my mother watched his ex sit beside his mother, passed plates around and laughed before his father reached the punchline of an old joke. On the drive home, she finally said that was a little strange. My fiancé had driven separately and stayed behind to help clean up, so I rode home with my parents and asked whether I was overreacting. My mother hesitated. I don't know enough to say, just make sure you can talk to him. I laughed without humor. That's the problem. By the time my parents dropped me off, he had already made it home and changed into sweatpants. I told him my parents had noticed how close his ex was to the family. He rolled his eyes. So now your parents are involved. They were there. They have eyes. Your mother has never liked my family. That wasn't true. My mother had spent years bringing thoughtful gifts, remembering birthdays, and enduring his mother's habit of analyzing everyone over dessert. But he was already defensive, and I was tired. He said he didn't want this becoming a big issue before the wedding. I stood in the doorway thinking it already was a big issue. I just hadn't understood yet that I was the only person expected to keep treating it like a small one. The wedding was scheduled for early fall, so the months before it became a blur of contracts, guest lists, food tastings, and arguments disguised as logistics. His parents were paying for a large part of the ceremony. At the time, I was grateful. Later, I understood that money can be a gift and still come with a hand on the steering wheel. His mother took over the seating plan because she claimed to understand the family dynamics better. I was working long days at the firm while we prepared a proposal for the restoration of an old building downtown, so I let her handle it. The wedding planner invited us to review the final layout at a coffee shop. My fiancé arrived late and spent the first few minutes answering messages while I checked tables. Then I saw his ex's name. She was seated at the family table, beside his aunt and directly across from his parents. Why is she sitting there? The planner looked at him. He looked at the ceiling. My mother placed her. He said, "Did you know? I knew she was invited. That isn't what I asked." He paused. His pauses were usually where the truth went to hide. I didn't think it would be a big deal. I pushed the layout toward him. "She's sitting closer to your parents than I am. You're at the head table. You're the bride. Exactly. She's your ex." Why is she being presented as immediate family? He rubbed his forehead. "Can we not do this here? We could never do it at home because he was tired at his parents' house because it embarrassed them, or in public because it was inappropriate." Apparently, every location in the country was unsuitable for discussing the problem following us everywhere. The planner suggested moving his ex to a table with long-time family friends. I thanked her. He said we should leave it until he spoke to his mother. "It's our wedding," I said, "and she's paying for part of it." There it was, clean and ugly. I reminded him of a family trip 2 years earlier. I had been waiting for approval to take time off work, and his mother warned there might not be room for me if I confirmed late. His ex was already included. When I finally went, she had the guest room because she had confirmed first. While I slept beside a broken fan, he said I was collecting incidents. Because there are incidents to collect. He looked at me like I had become exhausting in real time. I told him I would raise the issue at the dinner our parents were having the following week. He asked me not to turn dinner into an intervention. I don't want an intervention. I want an answer. He called me dramatic. I wish I could say I canceled everything then. Instead, I sat there reviewing linen samples while my chest tightened, approved a shade of cream I could not have identified under oath, and went back to work. That afternoon, I went back to correcting measurements on another historic facade. Old buildings, unlike people, usually tell you exactly where the cracks are. The dinner between our families was supposed to be pleasant. My mother chose a restaurant downtown and said it would be good to sit together without wedding binders. She also planned to ask about the seating chart because I had finally told her the full story. I warned my fiancé in the car. "My mother may bring it up. Why does your mother need to be involved in our seating plan? Because your mother is involved in our seating plan." He said nothing. Conversation stayed safe through most of the meal. Work weather parking, a cousin's new apartment. His mother asked about the restoration proposal, and when I explained that I might join the team, my fiancé joked that I was already married to my job. Everyone laughed except me. After the main course arrived, my mother put down her fork. I had one question about the wedding seating. "Arden mentioned that your son's former girlfriend is at the family table. Is there a reason?" His mother smiled carefully. "She has been part of our family circle for many years. I understand," my mother said, "but it could be confusing for guests." His father replied that anyone who knew them understood the relationship. My father pointed out that not every guest knew their history. It should have been awkward but manageable. Instead, my fiancé put his glass down too hard. "This is exactly the outdated thinking I've been talking about. My mother blinked, outdated. The idea that people have to hate each other after a breakup. No one is asking anyone to hate her, I said. Then why is this becoming a public debate? Because you won't discuss it privately. His mother lifted a hand. Let's not accuse each other. Her son had insulted my family, but accusation was apparently the emergency. My father asked why a former partner was being given a place of honor at the wedding. She's sitting at a table, my fiancé said. With your family, I replied, she is family to them. The words hit harder than I expected. My mother asked where that left me. His mother said there is room for more than one meaningful relationship in a family system. I stared at her. I'm not asking you to stop caring about her. I'm asking you not to treat her like your son's partner at our wedding. His father insisted no one was doing that. Then move her. The table went quiet. My fiancé looked furious because I had finally made the request impossible to blur. He said I didn't get to dictate whom his parents considered family. I get a say in who sits at the family table at my wedding. Our wedding, great. Then use your half of the say. He laughed without humor. This is insecurity, Arden. My mother asked him not to speak to me like that. He accused my family of caring about appearances and said I had recruited my parents to pressure him. People at nearby tables began looking over. I could feel heat crawling up my neck. I wanted to disappear and flip the table at the same time. I said, I'm asking for one boundary. He stared at me like I had threatened to burn down his childhood home. Then he stood up. He pushed his chair back slowly and stood with the confidence of someone who believed the room would eventually bend around him. She's going to be in my family's life, he said. Birthdays, holidays, weddings, future celebrations, all of it permanently. His father said his name in warning. His mother reached for his arm. He ignored both. If you can't accept that, maybe you shouldn't go through with the wedding. The sentence hung above the table. Even his parents looked uncomfortable. That mattered because it meant he had gone beyond their usual language about maturity and family bonds. He had made the choice plain. His ex's place was permanent. Mine depended on accepting it. He waited for me to back down. I knew that expression. It was the look he gave me after arguments when he expected me to apologize for making things unpleasant. Usually I did. I softened my voice, promised to work on my insecurity, and called that compromise. I sat there long enough for him to relax slightly. Then I said, you're right. His shoulders dropped. I stood, picked up my bag, and added, I shouldn't marry you. Nobody moved. He blinked. What? I said I shouldn't marry you. Arden, don't be ridiculous, emotional, insecure, dramatic. All the labels lined up ready to explain me away. But something inside me had gone quiet. Not calm exactly, more like a power outage. I looked at my parents. Can we go? My mother stood immediately. My father placed cash on the table with shaking hands. My fiancé stepped around his chair. You're really leaving because of this? No, I'm ending the wedding because of this. His mother told us to sit down because emotions were high. His father said everyone needed to cool off. My fiancé laughed and told me we would talk when I stopped performing for my parents. That sentence followed me through the restaurant. Outside, my mother reached for me, but I stepped away because I knew I would collapse if she touched me. I said I didn't want to discuss it in the parking lot. My father asked whether they should drive me home. In the car, nobody spoke for several blocks. Then I said, I wish one of you had said something sooner. My mother turned around. About what? The way he talks to me. The way they make me feel crazy. My father looked stricken. I should have stopped him tonight. You tried, not enough. My mother said they had been afraid that pushing too hard would make me defend him and pull away. She wasn't wrong. I had translated his moods, justified his mother's comments, and explained away their concerns. Admitting they were right would have forced me to act. At home, wedding invitations were stacked beside the wall. The venue, deposits, caterer, dress, and guests hit me all at once. My mother asked whether I was sure. I sat on the couch with both hands over my face. Yes, I wasn't sure how I would survive the next week. I was sure I wasn't marrying him. After my parents left, I called the wedding planner. It was late, but she answered. The wedding is canceled, I said. She was quiet for a second. Are you safe? That question almost broke me. I told her yes. There had been no physical violence, just a public ultimatum and a moment of clarity I would have preferred before paying deposits. She asked whether I wanted everything paused or formally canceled. Cancel. Anything in my name? Cancel it. Don't authorize new payments. She promised to send a list showing which contracts were mine, shared, or signed by his father. Some deposits were non-refundable. Others might be partly recovered. I opened my laptop and made a spreadsheet because apparently that is how architects have nervous breakdowns. Venue, caterer, photographer, rentals, flowers. I marked amounts, deadlines, and signatures. The practical work kept me from thinking about the fact that I had ended my engagement less than 2 hours earlier. My phone rang repeatedly, my fiancé, his mother, his father. Then a message appeared from his ex. Before answering, I went upstairs for clean clothes and saw my wedding dress hanging in the guest room closet. I opened the garment bag just enough to see the fabric, then closed it so fast the zipper caught. I was not ready for the dress to become evidence. It had been altered to fit me, paid for, and discussed by women in my family who had cried when I chose it. Now it looked less like clothing and more like a very expensive accusation. Is it true the wedding was canceled? I typed, "Why are you asking me?" and deleted it. Then I typed, "Congratulations," deleted that too, and put the phone face down. Around midnight, my fiancé came home. He found me at the kitchen table surrounded by contracts. "Are you seriously canceling vendors?" "Yes, you didn't even wait for us to talk. We talked at dinner." That wasn't a real conversation. It was real enough for you to tell me not to marry you. He said people say things when angry. You stood up to say it. He paced through the kitchen, saying I was humiliating him and embarrassing his parents. He worried about vendors and gossip before asking whether I was hurt. When I pointed that out, he said, "Of course I know you're hurt. Then say what you did." I defended my family. "You chose your ex's permanent place over our marriage. That's not what happened. It is exactly what happened." For a moment he sat with his face in his hands, and I saw the man I had loved. He had made coffee before my early meetings, fixed the sticking door, and stayed beside me when my father had surgery. Bad relationships are not made entirely of bad moments. He could be tender and still make me doubt my reality whenever my needs inconvenienced him. He asked me to sleep before making anything final. I told him cancellation had already begun. "You really did this." He said I almost apologized. Instead, I said, "You showed me what my future would look like." I believed you. He slept in the guest room. I lay awake listening to him move behind the wall. Before sunrise, the planner sent the contract summary. 10 minutes later, his father called. His father began with money. "Do you understand what this cancellation will cost?" I stood in the kitchen holding an empty mug. "Good morning to you too." He listed deposits, rentals, and balances, then mentioned speaking with a lawyer. I told him I would honor any contract I had signed and nothing more. I also reminded him that his son had issued the ultimatum in front of both families. "That doesn't give you the right to create financial damage. It gives me the right not to get married." He said I was acting impulsively and that we would discuss it when I was calmer. I hated how everyone treated calmness as a future condition I had to meet before my decisions counted. A few hours later, his mother called with a softer approach. "Major decisions made during emotional flooding can feel very certain," she said. "Please don't diagnose my breakup. I'm not diagnosing you. You're using clinical language to tell me I don't know what I want." She asked me to allow space for repair. I told her repair would have required her son to care about my boundary before I ended the wedding. She suggested counseling. For what? To negotiate how much of my marriage belongs to his ex. She called that unfair. I called it my framing and told her the decision was final. That evening, my fiancé entered with his key and found 2 suitcases near the stairs. "What is this?" "Clothes, work things, medication, chargers. I didn't go through anything private. You packed my stuff, some of it. I need you to stay with your parents while we arrange the rest. You can't throw me out. I live here. The house is mine." He stared at me as though ownership were a tactical surprise. It wasn't. I had bought the house before meeting him. His name was never on the deed, and he contributed to utilities and groceries rather than the mortgage. He sat on the couch. "I'm not leaving tonight." My heart pounded, not because I thought he would hurt me, but because I knew how easily I could be worn down if he stayed. One apology one night beside him, and I might start bargaining against myself. "Then my parents are coming over." I said, "You're bringing them into this again? They were present when you offered me a breakup." He called me cold. I said cold was the only temperature at which I could function. We went in circles for almost an hour. He said he needed his own bed. I said I needed my own house. He said I was erasing 5 years. I said 5 years were the reason it hurt, not the reason I had to stay. Finally, he grabbed one suitcase and said he would return the next day. Text first. At the door, he asked, "You really think you can shut me out this fast?" For once, I didn't soften the answer. "Watch me." The door closed. I locked it, slid down against it, and cried so hard I scared myself. He returned the next afternoon and asked to talk before taking more things. I agreed because part of me still needed to hear that nothing had happened with his ex. Betrayal has categories, and I was hoping I had only been living in the less humiliating one. We sat at the kitchen table where we had chosen invitations and assembled furniture badly. "I never cheated on you," he said. Physically, his eyes shifted. At all, that wasn't my question. He became defensive. There was nothing physical. The specificity told me enough. I asked whether he knew she still had feelings for him. He looked down. "How long? I don't know. She made comments sometimes." He admitted she had joked that some relationships never really end and told him after our engagement that she needed time to adjust. And you never told me. I didn't want you to overreact. You hid it because you knew I would have a problem. He insisted he had hidden nothing. I showed him her message asking whether the wedding was canceled and asked how she had known before he even came home. Another pause. He admitted he had texted her from the restaurant after I left. He had also complained to her about our arguments, telling her I was rigid, stressed about work, and uncomfortable with his family. He had discussed the seating dispute with her before the dinner. Did you ever tell her you might get back together with her? No, did you ever tell her that would never happen? He looked at me. That silence was the answer. You didn't have to promise her anything. I said you just had to keep the door unlocked. He called it unfair and reminded me that he had proposed, moved into my house, and planned a wedding. You chose me for the role of partner while letting her keep the emotional privileges. He said I loved you, past tense. He closed his eyes. You know what I mean? I did. I had spent years translating what he meant into something kinder than what he did. We packed in silence. A few days later, he returned with his father for the larger items. His father barely looked at me. Before the final load, I placed the ring box on the counter. Keep it, my fiancé said. I don't want it. You can sell it. I'm not turning this into a reimbursement. He took the box and put his key beside the sink. For a moment, I expected an apology. Instead, he said, I hope you don't regret this. I already regretted parts of it. Regret does not always mean wanting to reverse something. Sometimes it is grief for the life you thought you had. I said, I hope you understand it someday. He left without answering. I changed the locks that afternoon. The story began changing almost immediately. At first, people only knew the wedding had been canceled. Then mutual friends sent careful messages that made it obvious they had heard more. I heard this was about jealousy. He says you demanded his family cut her off. Are you okay? People are talking. According to his version, I had become obsessed with his ex, demanded that his parents erase her, and canceled the wedding when they refused. The restaurant ultimatum disappeared. In one retelling, I stood up without warning and announced everything was over. I felt humiliated. Guests had booked travel. Co-workers had congratulated me. I had to cancel dress fittings and explain why my planned leave was no longer needed. The office administrator tried to be kind and asked whether I wanted to keep the days off anyway. I said no too quickly. Then hid in a restroom stall because kindness was somehow harder to survive than gossip. The worst calls came from distant relatives who wanted details while pretending they wanted to support me. One asked whether I had always been jealous. Another suggested I postpone instead of canceling, as if the problem were rain. I learned to say, the relationship ended and I am not discussing it. Then hang up before they could turn my life into entertainment. For several days, I told myself dignity meant silence. Then a friend asked whether I had truly demanded that his parents stop speaking to his ex. That was when I understood silence wasn't neutral. It was giving him the whole page. I wrote a short message to the people closest to us. I said the wedding had been canceled after he stated in front of both families that his ex would remain permanently included in birthdays, holidays, weddings, and future family events, and that if I couldn't accept it, I should not marry him. I said I chose not to marry him. Some people supported me immediately. One of his cousins replied that is what happened. Others stayed silent. A longtime family friend called and said both of us had been emotional. Only one of us issued an ultimatum. She said relationships required compromise. I asked what compromise she suggested. Half an ex at the family table, alternate holidays. She ended the call quickly. My parents told me to stop engaging. They were probably right, but anger made restraint feel like surrender. I checked messages constantly. Watched who removed me from a social media app and searched for signs that his ex had posted about him. She had not, which somehow made me more obsessive. One night, I reread old arguments between my fiancé and me. Every time I raised a concern, the conversation shifted toward my tone. Every time he hurt me, I ended up reassuring him. I found a message from the family trip where I apologized for being difficult after he told me I should be grateful his parents included me. I sat on the kitchen floor and cried. Then I got angry at myself, which at least got me off the floor. 2 weeks after the dinner, his ex asked to meet. She said there were things I deserved to know and suggested a public coffee shop. My mother said not to go. My father thought it might provide closure. The therapist I had started seeing after the breakup asked what I hoped to gain. The truth. Do you believe she can give you that? I don't know. Then I went anyway because ending a wedding had not magically turned good judgment into my strongest personality trait. She was already at the coffee shop. She looked tired, which annoyed me. I wanted her to look smug so I could hate her efficiently. She stood, then seemed unsure whether to offer a hug. I sat before she decided. She began by saying she had never slept with him during our relationship. He said the same, but I crossed emotional boundaries. I waited. After the wedding was canceled, he had gone to her apartment angry and confused. He said maybe everything had happened for a reason, apparently expecting the breakup to mean something for them. She asked what he wanted. He said he didn't know. She told him she would not become the person he ran to because I had finally stopped accepting the situation. Then he blamed her. He said her involvement had made his family life harder. She reminded him that he had encouraged it. What does that mean? I asked. He told me I would be at the family table. My chest tightened. He said his mother handled the seating. She made the chart. But he told me before the dinner that I was staying there and that you would eventually accept it. He had sat beside me in the planner's office pretending uncertainty while assuring her of the result. She said she should have refused. Yes, I liked being included. Yes. She admitted part of her had believed that if she stayed close enough, there might eventually be an opening. I appreciated the honesty and hated her for making me appreciate anything. Their breakup had not been as clean as the family claimed. He ended it because he felt trapped by expectations of marriage, but his parents kept treating her like family. When he complained about me, she sometimes believed it meant he might return. Did he ever say he wanted you back? No. Did he ever clearly say he didn't? She shook her head. She showed me messages. He had written that I was spiraling about the seating chart, that his mother would not move her. And finally, she'll calm down. She always does. That line hurt more than the rest. He had built his confidence around my habit of returning to peace no matter what it cost me. I asked why she was telling me now because he started blaming me. And I realized he had been telling each of us what kept us in place. That did not make her innocent. She knew I was uncomfortable and accepted the family table anyway. I told her so. I know, I'm not asking you to forgive me. Good. Before leaving, she said she planned to step away from his family because you understand the harm or because he didn't choose you afterward. She flinched. I felt cruel, but I didn't apologize. Both, she said. It was probably the most honest answer anyone had given me in months. I left with more information and no relief. Closure, I learned, is often just a nicer word for receiving the final set of injuries. A mutual friend later called to say his family was fighting. I pretended not to want details, then asked for every detail. Healing is not a straight line, and sometimes it stops for gossip. His ex had sent his mother screenshots proving that he encouraged her involvement while telling me the seating was entirely his parents' decision. His mother confronted him. His father cared mostly about whether any of it changed who was responsible for the wedding expenses, which was so consistent, I almost admired it. That evening his mother called. She sounded less polished. She said she had seen the messages and now understood there were parts of the situation she had not known. You knew enough, I said. I knew you were uncomfortable. You decided preserving the family arrangement mattered more. She called that harsh. I called it accurate. She explained that her son had told each person something different. I wanted to ask how she had missed the pattern, but I already knew the answer. His version allowed her to keep believing the family was healthy. Then she asked whether there was any chance of reconciliation. Now that the truth was clearer. The truth makes me less likely to return. She said serious mistakes could be repaired. I agree. Repair doesn't always mean reunion. I asked whether she was sorry. She said she was sorry the situation had become painful. That isn't the same thing. She was still processing her role. Of course she was. Her role needed processing. Mine had needed accommodation. The financial threats eventually disappeared. I paid the contracts in my name. His father paid the ones in his, and we divided the shared obligations according to the signatures and cancellation terms. The planner recovered more than expected. Nobody sued anyone. Actual documents and